Chapter 9. Resolutions. The remaining months passed without incident. Ida had set a boundary that Herald needed to overcome. She had tested him in a way he wasn't used to, prodding him for an answer even he didn't know. The results of the rest of the tests concluded that everyone that said they were a vampire was not human. Cillian Industries wanted to hide the evidence, thinking they could save face after losing so much money trying to protest their seized lands. In the final days of the trails, the company signed a deal that allowed them to recoup a portion of the costs of the study by selling their findings to a few interested vampires. Herald and Ryan didn't speak after the walk-in incident. He and Paige hung out in her room up until the final days of the study. Penny had her baby. It was a girl. They named her Chelsea. Herald was surprised to find out it was a full-blooded vampire. He asked about it, but Ida reminded him about the chances. However rare, Chelsea was born a vampire. Penny was made a vampire from Laurel's blood immediately after giving birth. Cherry and Iada had to take care of the baby for 3 days while Penny turned. When it was over, she came out with gray eyes. Laurel was happy that his 2 women were rare examples of genetics. Herald never saw Marin, Ellen, Crystal, Cherry, Laurel, Penny, Ryan, Paige, or Adonis again. They left as soon as the study was over. All that Herald found was a note from Ellen that read, "You will find everything you desire in time." It sounded more like a fortune cookie than a goodbye note, but Herald accepted it none the less. Jenna and Michelle moved in together and were married in New York soon after. Jenna swore she would never settle down and have kids. But so did Michelle. The last thing Herald was told is that Jenna was propositioning attractive men to knock her up and sign a paternity waiver. George Zimmerman, Kathy Schultz, and the rest of the laboratory research faculty moved on to other projects. Herald heard that most of them were hired to test the biological effects of high SPF sunscreens on vampire tissues. 2 weeks after the end of the study, Aada stood at the front door of Herald's loft. All of the boxes were still packed from 1 year ago. Herald had successfully lived out of 3 boxes the entire time. It was 9 at night, and Iada was about to say her final goodbye to Herald. "I hope this is not the goodbye it is." Iada's somber expression was not herself. She was disappointed. "I can't say I didn't enjoy it." Herald smirked. "But did our time teach you anything?" Ida asked. "Yeah, I guess it did." Herald had become tempered from his time with Ida. "Can I come with you?" Iada leaned into Herald, placing her lips against his neck. "No," Herald pushed back. "Then I hope to see you one day in the future." Iada's eyes brightened. "I could wish for nothing more." She embraced Herald and walked away into the night. "Don't you want me to call you a cab?" "It's dark," Herald yelled out. Ada turned back for a moment. "Do I look like I need a cab?" "What about a mugger?" Herald warned. "You mean a free meal and spending cash?" Iada's joke didn't sit well with Herald, and she knew it. "I'll be fine." Herald didn't respond. He watched Ida walk away into the night until she turned the corner. With that, Ida was gone from his life. 3 months passed as the news captured the outpour of thousands of churches across the world. They unanimously argued the existence of vampires, noting that they were creations of the devil and not welcome on this earth. To that, most governments quelled the riots with one simple point: segregation would be open racism. And since the vampires were directly threatening to kill people, national tolerance became the norm. There were still those that clung to hatred, but in reality, there was no real hate crime that didn't end in a human corpse. Herald took some time off between jobs. He wanted to think about what to do next. He was searching for a direction to his life. He moved into the country, to a townhouse in Utica. Numerous magazines had tried to interview him asking about the year-long experiment. He had turned them all down, even after they all offered a great deal of money. Herald didn't want to share any personal information with the world. He thought about Iada a lot, daydreaming a bit more than he should about their nights in his loft. There was a piece of Herald's life missing. Herald sat in a coffee house. The people inside didn't matter. They were human. All he cared about was a certain vampire now. He thought about how he could possibly travel to London and find Ieda if he wanted to. He lamented his failed career as a doctor, thinking about all the preparation he had undergone during high school. Herald had logged hundreds of hours on a volunteer rescue squad as a teenager. He had taken hundreds of hours of advanced placement courses. All of it was wasted. "More coffee, sir?" the waitress asked in a soft voice. Her perfume was vanilla. "Ada?" Herald raised his head. "No, honey. It's Julie." The waitress looked nothing like Ada. She just had her tone of voice. "But I get off at 6 if you'd like to talk about it." Herald lowered his head in disappointment. A cold sigh was enough to dissuade Julie from asking any further. Herald didn't have the moment he needed to fully appreciate the depression he was in. There was a commotion across the room. Someone had fallen onto the floor and was shaking uncontrollably. "Quick, get a spoon! He's having a seizure! We need to make sure he doesn't swallow his tongue!" Julie yelled to the cook in the back of the kitchen. Herald immediately jolted up and rushed to the man on the floor. The cook tossed the spoon over to her, and she was about to place it in the man's throat. Herald took a hold of Julie's hand firmly. "Don't! You shouldn't do that." "But he's going to bite off his tongue. He could die." Julie argued and struggled against Herald. "No, he won't." Herald pulled the man away from the chairs and the wall. "Move those other chairs back." Herald lifted his shoulders. "Take his arms and legs. We need to make sure he doesn't hit himself." The cook stood and looked for something to do. "Call 911, Herald told the cook. The larger men in the area took the man's arms and legs, holding them still. "How do you know? Are you a doctor?" Julie asked Herald. "No, I'm not," Herald responded, pulling back the man's eyelids for a second. "Then how do you know this will work?" Julie wanted to be sure they were doing the right thing. "When someone is having a seizure, you should never put anything in their mouth. It could perforate the esophagus." Herald spit out the sentence like it was elementary. Julie clearly didn't understand. "It might tear his throat," Herald explained. "It's a common misconception." "How do you know all this?" Julie looked down at the spoon in her hand and dropped it out of shock from what she almost did. "I used to run in a rescue squad when I was younger." Herald looked back at the cook. "Did you get through?" "Yeah, they're on their way." The cook wiped his forehead. Julie stared at Herald with adoration. "You should really do this for a living, you know." "What?" Herald was surprised. "But I really didn't do anything." "The hell you didn't." "I might have killed that guy." Julie heard the ambulance pull up to the parking lot. The emergency medical team burst into the coffee shop. They brushed everyone away from the man on the floor. The 4 team members quickly surveyed the man and lifted him gently onto a stretcher. One of the EMTs looked down to see the spoon on the ground. "You didn't use this, did you?" Julie's face went red. She couldn't talk out of sheer fright. "No." Herald stepped in. "I didn't let it get that far." Nothing was placed in his airway. The other EMTs carted the man outside. "Thank God. You have no idea how many people we get that are bleeding to death by the time we get to them because of those damn things." The EMT gestured to the spoon on the floor. "Thank you." The EMT shook Harold's hand. "Don't worry about it." Harold graciously nodded his head. The EMT jumped back into the front of the ambulance and they sped off. Julie turned to Harold. "That was amazing." Harold and the rest of the patrons went back to their corners of the shop. "How much do I owe you for the coffee?" Harold humbly asked. Julie coughed in astonishment. "Let me get the ticket." She left for the back of the kitchen. A moment later, Julie, the cook, and the 3 other waitresses came up to Harold's table. "What's this?" Harold was confused. "Your check," Julie said proudly. "But you don't have a ticket?" Harold raised an eyebrow. "Everyone," Julie spoke up. "Can I get your attention? Thanks to this good Samaritan, a man will be able to go home to his family tonight. Let's everyone give him the thanks he deserves." The whole of the coffee shop stood. All 20 people clapped for Harold. I don't know what to say. Harold was speechless. "Say you'll keep doing this." Julie stepped up to Harold and gave him a kiss on the cheek. Everyone's cheers, settled down, and they quickly went back to their activities. Harold gathered his things and began to leave. He turned back to Julie. "But what about the bill?" Julie laughed. "You're hopeless, you know that. It's on the house. Just put the $5 towards becoming a doctor, and we'll call it even." Julie smiled. Harold left the coffee shop with a sense of exhilaration. He was happy for the first time in months. A doctor? Maybe it's time.